Thanks, everyone. As TJ just said, thanks for taking the time to be with us here today. This is our last presentation before we collectively start to hibernate a bit during the holidays. Since this is all about meeting the blues experts, I guess we can start by literally meeting the blues experts. And I'm going to put all of our panelists on the spot here to do your own quick introductions, if you don't mind. I'll start with Sean Taylor.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sean. I work on the note card firmware. Been with Blues for coming up on 4 years now. So I'll be hopefully able to answer any of your questions related to note card firmware, note card functionality.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. And Scott Frazier.
Hi, I'm Scott. I work on NoteHub primarily. Been here about 2 years, so I'm hoping I can answer any questions related to the Note Card's interaction with NoteHub and how to use NoteHub.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm TJ. I work in developer relations. I work on the blog, the docs, all sorts of random things, guides, accelerators. So I'm going to be helping fielding questions and trying to help out best I can.
Mr. Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach. I work on the DevX stuff. I'm Sean's counterpart, so making it easy to interact with what Sean's working on. I also work in firmware, and I've been at the company for about 3.5 years, and I'll do my best for you today, but you get what you get and don't throw a fit. That's what I tell my kids. So
Last and least is me. So Rob Lauer, I'm Director of Developer Relations here at Blues. I've been here almost 3 years now, I realize, which is crazy for me to say out loud, but it's been a great ride. Any questions today? I, of course, hope you all came with questions. I know we asked you for your questions during the registration process, and we do have a lot of those to go through, but I just want to remind you, as TJ mentioned earlier, if anything pops up today, you can use either the Q&A panel or the chat panels. I think you should all be fully enabled to use both of them. Either is fine. You can use the Q&A panel if you want it to be more of a private question, or the chat panel if you want it to be public for everybody to discuss. So either way is fine. I do want to head one question off at the pass, and that is this being recorded? It is a resounding yes. You can find a recording of this presentation probably early next week on the Blues YouTube channel right here. And while you're there, of course, we advise you to subscribe to the channel, as we generally post a fair amount of useful video content there as well. Now, those of you who know Blues know this. This is the note card. For those of you who are new here, this one in particular is the new dual cellular and Wi-Fi device. Ships prepaid with 500 megabytes of data, 10 years of service. You may also know NoteHub, which is our proxy cloud service that literally enables the note card to connect to the cloud without provisioning a device, without issuing AT commands to manage the cellular radio, without rolling your own security. NoteHub and note card work together to form what we call a device to cloud data pump that I truly think is the simplest path rather to connecting physical devices to the cloud. And today, I really wanted to start our presentation with a brief overview of what we've collectively accomplished here at Blues. And I'll be honest, when I was putting together these slides, I became a bit overwhelmed with what we released this year. Honestly, like it was kind of amazing. So I'm going to try and stick to just the high notes. I'm also going to pause here and there for questions so we can include those as I go along, because I don't want to talk at everybody for the entire time. But we will leave the bulk of the time today to have more of a conversation, informal Q&A. So let's step in our collective time machine here and head back to a little earlier in 2023. And I want to start with this phrase, wireless harmonization. This is really the top of the Blues pyramid in 2023 and going forward, if you will. Everything that we're doing is built off this idea of product builders being able to choose the right radio access technology to build their connected solutions without making too many upfront commitments. Because in this harmonized world, when you're choosing the radio access technology you need, we feel this should be a deployment time decision instead of a development one. So when you're choosing Blues, you are developing a solution, and only when it comes time to deploy are you forced to make that choice of cellular, Wi-Fi, or LoRa based on the specific needs of that actual destination you are deploying to. And this year we worked really hard to dramatically simplify this process. And with Blues, this idea of wireless harmonization goes beyond just the harmonization of RAT or radio access technology. It also includes harmonization of location gathering technologies and the harmonization of data flow that we get from NodeHub. And we hit on all these in 2023. Drilling down a little bit more, starting with harmonization of RAT, this year we really followed through with this idea of prototyping with any wireless tech and deploying with any other without really changing a single line of code. And when you're choosing or changing that RAT, you should have confidence that they're fully swappable, which our note cards are physically and in the APIs we provide. Likewise, when it comes to future-proofing your deployments, someday in the not terribly distant future, 4G is going to sunset. Not trying to freak anybody out, but it will someday. And when it does, you'll want swappable connectivity with a theoretical 5G note card or a satellite note card. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but rest assured Blues is thinking that way as well. And next on the location front, you've always had access to GPS with any of these cellular-based note cards, but we all know GPS can be power hungry. It can take some time to get a satellite fix, which is why we launched the ability to effectively triangulate a location through identifying nearby Wi-Fi access points. This feature of Wi-Fi triangulation is available on any note card with onboard Wi-Fi, or if your host has access to a Wi-Fi module as well. It's also very, very power efficient and surprisingly accurate. And lastly, on the harmonization of data flow topic, with the note card, you can develop a single solution that can be deployed with any host with cellular, Wi-Fi, or LoRa, and you're not jumping through a lot of hoops to get there. And not only that, but that single solution with its multiple deployments still has that benefit of communicating with a single cloud service, which provides a single secure pipeline to your ultimate cloud application. With that, before I drill into any more details, I'm going to pause and maybe TJ, you want to hit us up with the first question?
Yeah, so the first one we had that came in submitted yesterday actually is probably fitting here. Somebody was asking, where do you see the note card in 2024? 5G, satellite? You showed that slide with all the different note cards. What's the next one on the list, basically?
I can certainly take a stab at answering the question. I mean, the 5G and satellite are certainly, we're more than aware of those technologies. I would say, luckily for all of us, we're very comfortable with the current lineup of cellular Wi-Fi and LoRa products we offer. What's coming in 2024, it's obviously too early for us to say or announce anything, but I don't know, am I being too cagey where we certainly can't announce any products, but just make it aware that we are very aware of these technologies, and we'll see what happens in early or mid 2024.
And then Steven asked in the chat about any plans for narrowband IoT solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we have so our cellular, we do have NB-IoT compatible cellular note cards. So either the older green PCB cellular note cards, there's a NB-IoT option on those, and even the new Cell plus Wi-Fi note cards, there's a low bandwidth or narrow band note card, we call them, that supports NB-IoT. And with that, we'll keep coming back to the questions, but I just want to kind of interleave some highlights as well and start with a quick recap of the hardware. I already just discussed some of these, but let's start with the big one. So we did launch the new cellular and Wi-Fi note card. This note card is available in 4 different models, as I just alluded to, and allows for that critical Wi-Fi to cellular fallback capability. We also released a new version of our low-cost Wi-Fi only note card. This is only $10. It's based on the new ESP, or not new-ish, ESP32S3. And we also announced the release of note card LoRa. This is not our first LoRa product, and we'll talk more about that today, but it is the first LoRa note card, which lets you connect your product to any Things Network LoRaWAN gateway. We are still in beta on the note card LoRa, but plan on doing a public release early next year. And we don't have anything to announce regarding usage of non-TTN gateways. That question always comes up. Nothing yet, possibly something next year. But really, like, the point of this slide is really to talk about and show how we are really embracing this idea of harmonization across these three different wireless technologies. And with the new note cards, we also had to release new note carriers, of course. So the new note carrier F supports every note card and has some changes to make usage of our OTA firmware update feature even easier to use. We also just released a new revision of the note carrier Pi Hat. This also fits all the note cards and adds some quick ports for easy peripheral expansion. I wrote up a tutorial on Hackster for using the new Pi Hat with the Raspberry Pi if you're curious. And yes, to answer any questions about the future revisions of the other note carriers that we offer, the revisions of the B and the A are in the works. I don't think we have a specific release date for those, but it should be Q1 2024. Fingers crossed. We also just released a new revision of our air quality monitoring solution called AirNote that's built around Note Card and Note Hub. So this features improved batteries, better antennas. Scoop was also released earlier this year. This is a lithium-ion capacitor that's considered more reliable than LiPo batteries, more stable. You can actually ship them legally, and they work in a wider range of temperatures. And of course, this is very self-serving, but you can purchase any of these at our store at shop.blues.com. So a ton of hardware released this year, more so probably than any other year. Next question.
We have some questions here. A couple questions about Sparrow. So Zach, if you want to cover that, just related to any new features for Sparrow, what's the future of Sparrow, all of those good types of things.
Right, yeah. So Sparrow was our original effort at LoRa, and it was to help us find the market fit and if that was going to be something that we had customers who were interested in. Sparrow was a success, and that has birthed the Note LoRa note card. Sparrow is losing focus to the Note LoRa right now because we're building up Note LoRa and we're putting our energy into that to giving you the same kind of seamless interaction you're used to with regular note cards. And the Sparrow repo will stay open, and we will try to put in any kind of critical bug fixes that we come across. But that does unfortunately mean that there won't be a lot of new sensors added or any kind of other tutorials coming anytime soon. I will say though, a lot of people like the TTN thing that Rob kind of mentioned, TTN, and we heard the name of another, I forgot the name of the other provider of LoRa stuff. But the way that we're going to have this work, it's going to be very similar to Sparrow, even though it doesn't seem like it immediately, because we are going to have a Blues branded gateway that is going to be a TTN gateway that you just hook to your local network, the same way you would have done with the Sparrow hub. And then you get to use these Sparrow note cards and a whole bunch of satellites that talk to your own TTN hub. So, and then all of that, you don't need a TTN account. You don't need to configure it. You just have to give it access to your internet. And then it will just appear as regular events in Note Hub. So you it's completely abstracted. So there's nothing that you need to do with TTN. And so you shouldn't really care about that unless you have a real, I wouldn't know what matter you would have that would make you super concerned about it, because you don't need an account with them. You don't need to set up anything with them. That's just the backbone on how it works. And then you get the added benefit of if you were to take one of our Note LoRa's to a city that had TTN infrastructure, then it would just automatically attach and then also route itself to Note Hub without any intervention from you. So it's going to work a lot the same as the good news about Note LoRa versus Sparrow. And like I said, Sparrow is getting deprioritized in favor of bringing up and providing the same experience that we have with all of our other note cards on Note LoRa.
Cool, thank you. All right, on to our cloud services, and by that, of course, I mean Note Hub. So we released a lot more than what I'm about to cover, but these are what I consider some of the greatest hits. Starting with this new way of filtering and searching events. Previously, there was a lot of black magic involved with sorting through all the data that you sent to Note Hub. We now provide a variety of filters and suggestions to get you to the data you want faster than ever. If you haven't tried this out yet, highly recommend. It's totally awesome. We also released some new routes. So with the NodeHub route, you can really easily deliver Notecard data to virtually any other cloud. And we released a data cake route, a Slack route for posting messages to Slack, for instance. But my favorite is probably the Twilio route. Lets you really quickly integrate with Twilio's messaging service. On environment variables, so this is one of the most powerful Notecard/NodeHub features. You can now bulk upload environment variables if you're managing a big project. In the background of this image as well, you can see a kind of a peek of a new UI we put together to allow for a better experience when managing environment variable inheritance, like from device, fleet to project. And we also released a C library to help you more easily access and manage environment variables. It's called Notecard Environment Variable Manager, very creative name, and it's available on GitHub right here. And on NodeHub, I want to focus a bit on what I consider the user programmable nature of NodeHub, if you will. And that starts with the NodeHub APIs. The team fleshed out numerous additional APIs for you to use and interact with your Notecard generated data. There's also a Postman collection for NodeHub that makes it even easier to test and use the NodeHub APIs using Postman. And if you're developing a JavaScript or a node-based application, be sure to check out the NodeHub JS library. Again, makes it considerably easier to integrate your web app with the NodeHub APIs. All right. Next question.
So we have a few of these. Scott, I'll probably send the broadest one here to you. That's, why do I have to use NodeHub with a Notecard? Why can't I just send data directly to my own server? This is one that comes up every now and then.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think most people don't know that we actually do provide an open source implementation of NodeHub. We call this MinHub. Um, and when I say MinHub, it's very, very minimal. It can decode the data coming from a node card, and it can provide very basic processing of those requests. And when I say basic, I mean just kind of bare bones. Like, for example, it just uses the file system to store data. It's not, I would not call this production ready. It's provided as basically a way so you don't have to reverse engineer the data is coming from the node card. So that's one thing just keep in mind. We do have that. But that being said, we really think that Node Hub provides kind of the most streamlined and cost-effective experience. We've seen a trend in the past decades of people moving to kind of hosted services like Amazon AWS, Azure, Snowflake, simply because it's more cost-effective. And we think kind of Node Hub provides a similar benefits. We think that the amount of engineering and infrastructure effort you would need to put into kind of standing up your own Node Hub and scaling it and all that is probably going to be cost a lot more than simply using Node Hub. And Node Hub kind of provides a lot of benefits right out of the box. Like, as Rob mentioned, we have UIs and APIs for managing fleets, devices, environment variables, events, and all this stuff is, constantly being updated. We have automatic storage of events for 90 days as a method of redundancy. So, if your routing endpoint goes down, as we see happen sometimes with customers, events don't get routed to you for whatever reason, then you can just go into NodeHub and those events are still there and you can go in and just reroute them once your endpoint is back up. So that kind of provides like a level of peace of mind. And kind of going along that point too, we have a service level agreements to keep NodeHub up. You can rest assured that we have engineers on call 24/7 to make sure that NodeHub is up. And it just provides the most streamlined experience. And we really believe that if you use NodeHub enough, you will see that the benefits are going to far outweigh the costs. And I'm happy to answer any kind of follow-up questions to that. I really do believe it's going to be cost effective for everybody from a hobbyist to enterprises. We do give monthly top-up credits. So if you're just using using NodeHub in a kind of modest way, it's probably going to be free for you. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, full transparency, I think that's a question that we get quite often. And a lot of people don't see the value of NodeHub until they've gone that DIY route and realized how difficult it really is to do all the things that we do for you. Which is unfortunate that you have to take that kind of negative path, but I think we're always trying to improve like our documentation and guides to kind of prove out the value of NodeHub, and you'll continue to see that next year as well. But on the note card firmware, so the firmware on the note card itself has gone through numerous iterations this year. Starting with improvements around our OTA DFU feature we call note card outboard firmware update. We also released some new APIs that let you work with uploading and downloading large binary objects. You can also programmatically switch between primary and secondary SIM cards if you happen to be using an external SIM with your note card. And earlier in the year, we released some changes that actually help decrease cell data usage when your note card is in continuous mode. I feel like I'm really glossing over this because I really want to single out Sean Taylor here for his work on the note card firmware. Not shown here, not necessarily documented anywhere, are the hundreds and thousands of paper cuts that Sean has helped resolve for customers or for us over the past year, really helping to make the developer experience of working with the note card incomparable in my mind. So thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, the one other feature I'd point out there is with the note card cell plus Wi-Fi, you have the ability to fail over from Wi-Fi to cell. So you can use Wi-Fi for the bulk of your data and then fail over to cell when Wi-Fi goes down.
For anybody that hasn't tried
completely hidden from the host.
Yeah, for anybody that hasn't tried that yet, maybe you've only tried a cellular note card, it's really kind of magical how well it works. You tell the note card what Wi-Fi network you want to use by default, and the note card basically tries to use it by default. And if it's non-responsive, it's not there, or even if it's just slow, like the network exists, but it doesn't have a backing internet connection, the note card basically just seamlessly falls back to cellular without you having to do anything. And it's such a common use case to have Wi-Fi by default, but having a device that always needs to connect for security reasons, for whatever reason, and it works extremely well.
And the other nice feature with it is you get Wi-Fi triangulation kind of for free on the cellular. We know a lot of our customers have indoor locations where GPS just doesn't work, and not only does Wi-Fi work indoors, of course, where GPS doesn't, but it's pretty accurate. It can be almost as accurate as GPS, as Rob mentioned, but the power consumption difference from Wi-Fi triangulation to GPS is enormous. You know, it's probably 100th of the power to do a Wi-Fi triangulation than a GPS position fix.
Perfect.
It's scary accurate, actually. It's first time I ran it, it got me to the right corner of my house, and I didn't even know. It's not like I have a ton of Wi-Fi networks around me. I don't even know. It's quite good.
So let me dive into the last topic here, and that's with our hardware and services and APIs are really only so useful until we also offer a variety of tools and SDKs to actually help you use them. So Zach and team spent much of the year focusing on really big improvements across all of our supported SDKs. Specifically, I'd point out a lot of work done in unit testing, making sure these SDKs are more stable and more useful for you all. A little under the radar, as part of the in-browser terminal available at blues.dev, we also released the ability to actually update note card firmware through the terminal directly. This makes it super easy to update single devices by just plugging them in over USB and handing over some commands. And of course, big thanks goes out to the broader Blues team, as we've released more than 40 now app accelerators. So if you're not familiar with these, they are a set of totally open source applications that showcase a variety of best practices with using the note card and NodeHub. These are available on blues.dev at blues.dev/accelerators. So that's the extended recap of Blues in 2023. Like, hopefully you've seen how this concept of wireless harmonization sort of trickles down into everything we have done and really will be doing in 2024. And I'm going to finally stop sharing and we can just get into tackling all the questions that you all have.
So Mike Kelly wrote something awesome that I think it's awesome anyway. It's the idea of breaking out all the rest of the castellated edge on the note carrier F, and we don't have anything like that right now. But if you're on our forum and you put that on there, then you'll put it in front of the right eyes where people might, I don't know. I hope that catches on because I really love that idea. So if you have a forum account, what's our forum? Is it Discuss or Forum or
Discuss.blues.com.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, there you go. Discuss.blues.com. If you have an account, put it out there because that way everybody at the company will see it. And I think it's a super awesome idea.
We had a question about the proxy routes and how they work as well. So for anybody that hasn't used a proxy route, it's basically a way of performing HTTP requests from the note card. So let's say you want to call some weather API to get the weather in your city. You could configure a proxy route on NoteHub where you tell it about the URL of the weather route, various any other HTTP headers, whatever is needed to hit that API. And then on the note card, you use the web dot method, so like web.get, web.put, web.post methods to interface with that proxy route. I know the question in the chat too said that you couldn't get it working after reading the documentation. The only other thing I can think of is you do have to be in continuous mode to work with proxy routes. So maybe that's something that's up as well. If you have a specific error, feel free to toss that in the chat as well. And maybe we can try to help you out. Or like Zach said, our forum is also great for that sort of thing because you could post in the full context of what you're trying to do and what error you're getting. And then we try to get to everybody in the forum and try to help you out.
Yeah, I think it's valid feedback. I don't think we do a great job of documenting these web transactions in our documentation. And so I think, I think it's something we could do to improve and provide more examples of it in real world scenarios. There was a question that came in through the registration about calling NoteHub to calling the NoteHub APIs to create routes. It's really difficult to understand. I can start by saying I agree with you. It's difficult to understand because routes, when you pull back the covers, they are really complicated, and depending on the route type, there's all sorts of different fields that you have to configure, different arguments. And that is all kind of exposed in the route APIs because we have to show all the underlying data that you need to send over. I will tell you one thing is that we have in our documentation backlog to provide a better interface for you to understand which fields are required for which different route types if you're going to programmatically start creating or managing routes. So that's coming. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I just reiterate, it's routes are definitely especially complicated. Like feel free to just reach out like on the forum. Like I would be happy to jump on that and help you debug your request, to make sure that works. It might be helpful to start off creating it from the UI just so you kind of know which fields you want and what you need, and then maybe I use that as a template for creating it from the API. But yeah. Wish it were a little easier. That is probably the hardest thing to create from the API.
Could also try the new Postman collection too. That's like now it's become my preferred way of hitting the NoteHub API because you just start with pretty much a valid request. So it becomes a little bit more like a UI, but you end up with the raw headers and the URL you need to use to put into whatever you're ultimately using to make that request.
I'm going to read this long question and maybe hand it over to Zach for the answer. And it may, I don't know, we can approach, well, you'll see what I mean when we get to it. So the question is, JSON has many advantages as an interface format, but it's not very efficient as everything needs decoding on receipt. Is there an opportunity to have an alternative set of fixed format responses, such as error codes and binary values, that would be much faster and take a deterministic time to decode?
Okay, there's a lot of context maybe missing. It sounds like you're talking about bringing the data down onto your host And so that's the question that I'm going to answer, because you could try it the other way and say data going out or just data over the air. I'm not sure. It's compressed. The JSON's compressed, so when it goes over the air, no big deal. And then cloud resources are infinite. So I have to assume that you mean the MCU. So that this is something, there is no answer today. I would desperately ask for that clarification and probably a post on the Blues forum. That would help us a lot. We do discuss it internally because this is something that we would like to, we want the note card to be absolutely as useful as possible. And the more clarification and context we can get, the more we can aim towards this. I'll let Sean jump in on this too, because he's a guy that really digs down in the note card and would have a lot to add.
Yeah, just to back up what Zach said, this is a very interesting question, but it's kind of a very broad question in scope. We think we've heard similar from other customers. And the context of the questions from other customers was that they have a very limited MCU, or maybe they have a legacy application on which it would be difficult to port a full JSON interface. And we're very interested in trying to solve that problem, but we would like to know more detail, because if we do approach solving that problem, we want to know that we're doing it in a way that's really going to solve it for the customers who've asked about it. And there just isn't quite enough nuance in the question to know exactly what is being asked for. So yeah, if you've already contacted our customer support, then great, I can get more details from them, because I talk to them about this very issue on a regular basis. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to post on the forum or reach out to our customer support and describe your use case in more detail so we can get a better idea of what we would need to do to meet your needs. But yeah, we're, like Zach said, we want to make the note card as useful as possible. So if we see an opportunity to do that, then we'll do just that.
When we watched the video of this recording, Scott had an interesting reaction to Zach saying cloud resources are infinite. That was pretty amusing to me.
Looking back, there's a question. Oh, I see it was answered by Sean. I think it's kind of interesting to talk about. The question was, I think you've got RAT covered pretty well. How about Edge AI ML on the note card? I think the current MCU lineup is inefficient as it's lacking an on-device NPU. How are you planning to address this gap? So Sean, in case anybody didn't see, Sean did answer this. So we have no immediate plans to support user functionality. So we don't allow programmatic access to the STM32 on the note card itself. And I don't think we ever will. We as a company, we need to maintain focus. And so we will rely on partners to handle that. But it's an interesting question, interesting thought for sure.
Yeah, I think the key is we want to keep the note card low cost and generic. And I mean, I can't speak for Ray, the company founder, but I feel like he would answer this question in the terms of, if you want to do Edge AI ML, then pick the appropriate host processor. And the appropriate host processor is so different for all of our many customers that we would end up implementing infinite number of note cards variations if we attempted to put that directly on the note card hardware itself. So yeah, sorry, we can't give you a better answer than that, but simple, inexpensive, and generic is the purpose of the note card.
I do want to see. So Craig had a question that went in chat as well. That was echoing a question about SIM card support for China, India, Brazil. We hear you loud and clear, and obviously those are three massive markets and gaps in our coverage. Again, we don't have anything to announce today, but please rest assured that we are thinking along this path and working on a solution that I think people will be quite happy with. Hopefully something to talk about early next year as well.
And also the new note card Cell plus Wi-Fi includes a second electronic SIM, potential to put a second electronic SIM on the note card itself, which would simplify the schematic of the host.
How about some Zephyr questions, Zach?
Okay, let's do that.
So in the chat, Jim had a question about struggling a bit as a Zephyr newbie to harmonize the getting started documentation between the Blue Zephyr SDK, the developer apps, and TJ's recent ML ops with Zephyr. Seems a few minor steps added could help newbies. Getting Zephyr development environment setup has become a challenge. More of a comment than a question, I suppose. But
yeah, well, it sounds like the answer. Well, this would be good for anybody that's listening, though. So just to talk about it briefly, we have a Zephyr. What do you call it? I guess a really easy way to get started with Zephyr. I don't really know any other way to describe it than that because it's not like an SDK or something. But we've taken all of we've run down the Zephyr homepage about what to install and then set up a Docker container that can execute on any machine and connects into VS Code. So really all you have to do is do a couple steps to set it up. And we've detailed those in documentation. I mean, like literally like 2 strings get changed. And then you can just have a running Zephyr compiler and everything else so you can get going. To answer the question, like how do you jump from that onto something that TJ built? I am hoping that TJ started there and then he can answer that himself because I don't know what's missing or I would have added it.
Yeah, and Jim, I saw your forum post on it. I've got it open in another tab here, so I'll take a look later. And it's still the thing is we have this Docker container partially because if you've ever went through the Zephyr stuff just raw, straight up, it's overwhelming, I guess would be one way of phrasing it. It's you're installing gigs worth of stuff and certain processes. So Zephyr is inherently just a little bit complicated, unfortunately, just the tech of what it does. It's one of those things where it's like high complexity, but you also get a lot out of it because at the end of the day, you get an incredibly powerful, robust ecosystem. So I think in this case, you've hit something that we just need to look into. So hopefully we can help you figure out this specific issue.
so we always get, not always. I mean, this is the second time we've done an event like this. But last year we had the similar question about antenna design for the note card. So the question is about, I know it requires special attention regarding the impedance and other things. What are the things needed to design specifically an antenna for the cellular note card? I don't know if anybody wants to take this. Like, I can provide my like sort of ignorant take on this, and that is that if it's your first time designing a product, putting together a prototype, I would always recommend starting with one of the flexible antennas that we offer. They work really well. They provide pretty broad spectrum coverage for LTE bands. Beyond that, we actually last week or the week before, we hosted a webinar, if you want to look it up on our YouTube channel, with Ignion, that we talked more about pursuing onboard PCB antennas with Ignion, which has been a massive success for us with the Note Carrier A. So these are both Ignion antennas. It works incredibly well there. I actually, just so you know that the Note Card LoRa is not vaporware, here's one on my my Note Carrier A as well. I don't know if anybody else has any more intelligent things to say about antenna design than that.
I think about it backwards, like what not to do, because I've done everything wrong. Like don't put it on metal, don't put it by metal. There's some other things like what I ran in the other day because the antenna, it also, you have to remember that the antenna makes like electromagnetic waves. And so I had a screen that was set right next to an antenna and it would wipe out the little controller that was driving the screen. And I had no idea what was going on for the longest time. And I was like, oh God. So, I mean, to me, like I always think about like just the raw basics of like, make sure your antenna is basically set as far away. Normally you have a keep out zone. Like you'll even see it on our PCBs that there's a keep out zone that's X amount of millimeters that need to be respected for the antenna. But really as far away as you can keep it, as like close to open air. It's just the simple things I think help you if you're just talking about basic connectivity. If you're trying to go beyond that and tune it, then that matters a whole lot about your environment and things way beyond anything we could just guess at. I mean, it requires its own special tools and a bunch of other things that, like I said, you just can't really talk about it without it being talked about in the instance that it's being built or provided. So when you're talking in general terms, I just think about what not to do instead of what to do, because I've made all those mistakes.
I put a link to the webinar in the chat if you want to check that out, because one thing Ignion talks about is they have both online testing tools that you can put in your design and get some feedback on how the antenna is going to work. And then they offer paid things where you can actually bring your board in, and then they can put it through the rigors of different conditions. So it really just depends on how crazy you want to get, because antenna is almost its own world, its own specialty. You can get really in depth on all that stuff.
I want to address Carter's question here in the chat. It's kind of a long one, but there's let me boil it down here. There's a project made by Paige where she pulls zip files down from NodeHub to update a weather app UI. I'm guessing this is with a Raspberry Pi.
Yes.
Being answered with the complexity of routes. I'm typing this. I want to see IPv6 communication between hosts and devices as compared to zipping new firmware and pulling it down to update a UI. Does anybody recall the project? Because this does sound like a overly complicated way of handling this scenario.
It's the accelerator. It's the weather kiosk accelerator. Basically, it uses environment variables as a way of pulling down information. It basically, you can almost put like an entire web app in and pull it down and update the UI on the Pi. I know about it in general. I have not run that one myself though.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not a very efficient way of performing what you're trying to accomplish. So
yeah, it's probably more to demonstrate the ability of the note card being able to move files down to and then operate on them. So to take in something from the cloud that's not just a firmware binary or something like that, and then perform operations. It's probably more a demonstration of that and less of a demonstration of how to run a kiosk particularly. I think that's just a not a reasonable example, but it's something that people do. You know what I mean? You're trying to say, like, I have this thing that we can do, and this is something people do, and you can do this. It doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. I just think that it shows that the note card has this capability in case it were to give you some kind of imagination or provide a muse for what you're actually trying to accomplish.
It's intended for, like, I'm a store and I have a billboard in my store that shows an ad for this sale, and then next week comes and we got a new sale. Well, I don't want to go to all my stores around the country and like do something. I want some dynamic way of doing it. Well, with that project, you can say, here's my HTML for my new sale, send it down to the Pi, and at this time, flip the switch to show the new ad. So it's more showing that the mechanism is possible, and it's not intended to be like a fully super pinned down, efficient way of doing it. It's more showcasing the capability, like Zach said.
I actually I want to interject one of my own questions for anybody who wants to answer it. What was your aha moment with a note card and NodeHub?
Oh, can I go? I had a huge one. So basically, my son has a food allergy, like a super severe egg food allergy. And egg is sneaky in everything, which is crazy, like breads and all sorts of, like every single pastry, frostings sometimes. It's really, I mean, it's like everywhere. And I even fake seafood, like that's made out of egg or egg white. So anyway, I was building a deal. So then I got my first EpiPens. I think I had, yeah, right here. I've got one on my desk, or like, so you always keep one handy because you're always afraid your kid's going to die like all the time. But these things are super temperature sensitive. So if they get over 90 degrees, they ruin. And they have a little glass window here that would let you know that maybe it's ruined or whatever. But you don't really look at it every day, to be honest. You have it in a bag and you're not pulling it out to check every second whether it's good or bad. And I realized like we were ruining some because you do something absent-minded, like go into the grocery store in the summer, and when you come back out, it's actually ruined because your car was like 140 degrees. So I built like a thermostat piece, and I built something to go with this thing all the time. So it had to be battery powered. It was a thermostat that just basically clicks whenever it gets too hot, and then it sends me a text message. And because it's battery powered, it's really important that it barely uses any battery. And so normally if you've used or written anything for a microcontroller, you have to understand the low power modes. You have to do a lot of smart handling of power switching to make sure that you're not just burning battery all the time for no purpose. And the note card idles at 8 microamps, so it barely consumes any battery, and it has this awesome ability to turn on and off your microcontroller using the enable pin. So I didn't have to I was able to write the stupidest microcontroller code ever. It was Arduino based. It didn't do anything intelligent at all as far as power handling goes. And I found out later when I was working on something, it actually had a memory leak in it. But all of that didn't matter at all because the note card runs all the time, super stable, no memory leaks. And it just, what would happen is the microcontroller comes on every 5 minutes, checks the temperature, or if it gets tripped from the thermostat, then it'll wake up. Then the note card will wake it up for that reason, because the note card can do minor interrupt handling and stuff through configuration. And yeah, it was the fact I was able to put it together in 2 days, and it's a low power application that can travel with my son's EpiPen, and it consumes 8 microamps. That's like unreal. And I actually wrote Ray, the founder, like a note, like, I get it. Like that was like the title of the email. Like, I get it. Like, I totally understand why this thing is so awesome, because in 2 days, I was able to write something that would have taken like 2 or 3 weeks of very considerate programming. And I wrote it as just really hot, fast Arduino garbage, but I was able to get all the benefits of low power. Like the memory can't run out because it doesn't loop. So even though it didn't free its own memory, it just goes to sleep right after that, or gets shut down. So that was my aha moment. It was just incredible, and super passionate about the note card ever since.
Awesome.
Well, I can't top that. My moment was pretty more straightforward because I just still remember when I tried out the cellular note card for the first time, and I could not believe that data had actually been transferred, just because you don't realize you tend to lose track of how much the note card abstracts away for you, just this whole cellular connection, the modem processing and everything. But I even thought, like, did that data go over a USB connection? Like, I just couldn't believe it all had all happened. So yeah, pretty cool.
I think mine is the Wi-Fi triangulation, and it's been a while since I first encountered it. But one of our biggest customers, I think I'm allowed to talk about them. They're called True Refrigeration. We help them with smart refrigeration monitoring, but one of their requirements was to know where the assets are, because these things are often sold to distributors who then distribute them around customers. And believe it or not, people lose refrigerators, and these are like $10,000 fridges, so you really don't want to misplace them. And we struggled for a long time with GPS, and could GPS work in that window of time when the refrigerator was being loaded from the truck into the installed location, which might be in a basement. And it's not a good solution. And then when I first saw Wi-Fi triangulation at my house, and that it was as accurate as GPS and it worked anywhere in my house, including in the basement, that was kind of an aha moment, that it provides such an inexpensive way to know exactly where your assets are. And I think that adds a lot of value to the data transport capability.
Yeah, I just want to come in real quick and just say, like, when I started Blues, I had absolutely no hardware experience. I've never used anything like this. And I'm a software guy, but I remember when I got my first note card, I set it up. I was very much shocked just how quickly and easily I was able to actually use it. It almost felt like too easy. Kind of reiterating, what TJ said, and that for me was like, wow, this can be extremely easy for somebody who's never even touched hardware. And that was a big deal for me.
I also do want to, there's a few more questions I wanted to get to, but I also wanted to ask if anybody has any, um, like anybody on our panelists have any cool projects they're working on, um, over the holidays or even beyond. And, I blanked on the other thing I was going to say. I don't know, Zach, I'm guessing you have something you're tinkering on.
Yeah, I did in the chat early on whenever no one was talking to me and I was all alone and Jim saved me. But I've got it's winter and so I'm using lots of hot water. So my water softener is perpetually empty because I don't ever think about it or check on it. And so I bought like a really cool, is it? Yeah, I've got it right here. A really cool waterproof range, I don't know, range detector. And I'm going to make again a battery, like a low power battery solution that's really easy and fast to make, and stick it out there on my water softener so I can see when it gets down, and then I can use our Twilio route to get a text message that just says, "Hey, ding dong, you're out of water salt, so go get it." Because it just sits there and runs dry, and I only notice because there's stalactites forming off of all my water faucets. So that's what I'm working on.
I have the same problem at my house. How does that sensor work? Do you mount it on the top and it looks down, or?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So my well, it looks like a garbage can that you fill with salt or whatever. That
Yeah.
thing has a little plastic like I don't know, like hole in the top. It's got a hole in a cap, I guess, a little plastic cap that goes in a hole that's exactly this size. And so I'm
Hmm.
just it's gonna screw in perfectly and just point directly down. But you could drill a hole if you don't have this literally perfect hole. I don't know how it got made like that. So
I look forward to that write-up.
yeah.
I remember what I was going to say is one thing I want to do early next year is host more of a community show and tell so we can kind of get people together and actually show off what everyone's working on because there's so many cool use cases out there that um, deserve more attention.
So my thing is, last year I built a tracker for my kids' bikes, and I kind of want to turn Wi-Fi triangulation on that thing just to see, because I've tried it at my house a bunch. I've tried it like putting it in a car, but I'm curious how well it can do pathing, and just almost as just an experiment to learn the APIs better too.
My silly project I'm working on right now, inspired by somebody on Reddit this morning, is to stack the note carrier Pi hats. So right here you can see we've got two of note carrier Pi hats with the cell plus Wi-Fi down here. It's kind of blurry, and then a
Put it on your
LoRa
forehead.
note card on the top.
Good
Yeah,
God.
actually right next to my face. Since you can specify the I2C address on note card, you can actually interact with two, well, in theory, should be able to interact with two separate note cards at once. So that's my silly holiday project. I know we're running up to the top of the hour. There's a question that was asked in the registration process from about certifications. I know it's not the sexiest thing to end with, but this question does come up a lot. So the question was, when adding a note card to my product, what certifications are required, and does Blues provide any assistance in the process? The simple answer is, for most products, there is no certification required since the note card is PTCRB and FCC certified. But in general, if this is a concern for you, like reach out to our sales team actually at sales@blues.com, and we can get connected with the right person to kind of help you that, or more likely with a design partner to get you set up. With that, I think unless anybody has any last second comments, questions, I appreciate everyone taking the time to chat today. All right.
Any other questions you have, discussed.blues.com. If you're watching the video of this or whatever, feel free to reach out there.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Thank you.